welcome back to the F2 show. I'm your host Fraser Ford, and joining me to review all of the action from this weekend, we have Inside F2 editor LA Wilshaw, Inside F2 writer Michael McClure, and Motormouth Simi Cousins. Coming up on the show then, we've crowned a new champion in Formula 2 this weekend. We review what has been an incredible season for Felipe Drugovich. 2 crazy races this weekend. We discuss some of the key incidents and talking points. And we have a really cool prize to give out to one of our lucky fans. More detail to come on that later in the show. Okay, only one place to start then. Leclerc, Russell, De Vries, Schumacher, Piastri, Drugovich. Felipe Drugovich is our 2022 Formula 2 champion. And LA, he joins an illustrious list of names, doesn't he?
Yeah, and he's done really well, hasn't he? And it's absolutely a fantastic group of people to be put in. You know, he's had 5 race wins this season, 9 podiums, and you can kind of look at that and feel like that's not very many. But then Piastri, had 6 wins last year with 11 podiums, and the year before, Mick Schumacher only actually got 2 wins. So Felipe's kind of like around that average. And I feel like you have to sort of go all the way back to somebody like George Russell and Charles Leclerc, to find the drivers that absolutely dominated, this series with 7 wins each. So I feel like it's a bit of a reflection of the times at the moment because of the exceptional rookies that we do actually have coming through. So if somebody thinks, 5 wins, that's not many. That's actually quite a nice amount. So yeah. Good on him.
A massive 75 even. Fraser, get your words out. 75 points advantage as well, isn't it? Which is absolutely huge. Imi, first time we've had you on the show. Welcome. Just how impressive has Felipe Drugovich been this season? Not only his outright pace in certain rounds like Zandvoort and Barcelona, for example, but also, I suppose, his ability to pick up the points on the races where he hasn't necessarily had the pace, but he's still managed to get in the points, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's been absolutely incredible the entire season. When I was sort of looking at it earlier, there's only been 3 races the entire season that he just hasn't picked up points. Every single other race, like both races, most weekends, he's had points, which is amazing. And I sort of went to look back at Oscar Piastri because obviously that's the season that everyone talks about. And actually, Oscar didn't pick up points on 4 of the races last year, and that was a shorter season. So in comparison, Drugovich's season has been incredible. He's been so incredibly consistent. And also the way he's done it, it's come quite quietly for him, I'd say. That it wasn't until you were getting into these last couple of weekends, people were sort of looking at like, is Drugovich going to be the champion here? And also it hasn't come down to the last race either. He's got an extra weekend and he's already the champion. So yeah, it's been incredible.
It really has, hasn't it? And as you say, consistency is key in Formula 2, and he certainly has been consistent this season. Michael, you were at Monza. What was the atmosphere like on Saturday after Felipe Drugovich had been crowned champion?
Oh, I mean, it's incredible. And it's one of these things that, you go to the event and you think when you're going as a reporter, you're going to interview drivers, team managers, all these other people. But some of the most special moments come when you're just kind of sitting back and observing. And that's sort of what I did Saturday night. Drugovich comes in with his family, his mom and dad, his entire entourage. He even had some friends there this weekend. And they all just went into the MP garage and celebrated. And one of the most heartfelt moments I saw in there was Pourchaire coming over. Obviously, they had a really difficult race as well. It was at the back of the field. And he came into the garage to congratulate Felipe, and MP gave him a standing ovation, not only, I guess, for, the sportsmanship that he displayed, but also for the season that he'd put together. And even though it fell apart at the end, the fight that he did put up, it might not have been enough ever to overhaul Drugovich, but it certainly pressured the Brazilian a little bit into doing something, not just kind of driving totally conservatively. So that was a really lovely moment to see. And you could see the entire, the spirits there were all lifted. It had been a good weekend for MP in both series. Formula 3, obviously, Alexander Smolyar got pole. Caio Collet got a podium. So even though the races didn't really pan out for MP and F2, it was just generally a very joyous environment. And something that I'm sure that team will remember forever. It's their first title in the second tier. And for a team that, really hasn't had quite as much front running pace in previous years, they've been sort of working their way up from kind of, I guess, lower midfield into the upper midfield. Last year, we saw glimpses of that pace with Verschoor and Doohan, and then this year, obviously running away with it was Drugovich. So no, it's really special. And I think a lot of people are seeing MP as perhaps a new force, a team that can really compete with the likes of Prema and Carlin and Virtuosi that have been there for all those years.
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about MP. Obviously, it's the first time they've taken the title or a driver to the title at this level. The highest that they've had a driver finish in the championship prior to this year was ninth, and that was Felipe Drugovich himself back in 2020. I suppose a word on their progression, Michael, and how well they have done, because they have come, as you say, from probably a midfield team and delivered this year, haven't they?
Yeah, so I spoke to a couple of people in the team, obviously, about what's going on, and there is a lot of new investment in MP Motorsport recently. They've got kind of some new things going on behind the scenes, and they've made a couple of very crucial hires. I would say it's been reported. So Drugovich's kind of engineering team currently consists of Paolo Angelella and Daniele Rossi, and I believe it's Paolo who was previously at Prema. Paolo had, if not at Prema, had been working with other top drivers in Formula 3, and he's very well regarded in the engineering industry, and so he's got kind of the right people around him now. And so much of motorsport, you don't necessarily realize it isn't just a car that's strong. You may think in terms of cars or like drivers, but so much of it is actually, who's engineering it, who's getting the setup right. It's a spec series with slight modification that you can make, and the engineer who's able to bring out those little pieces of the setup to make it suit the driver and really create a man and machine in harmony is I think the key here. And that's what I think happened at MP this year. It was just they were perfectly in sync. 2020, obviously, it was the same thing, and Drive to Survive, it's been mentioned, and at other times it's been mentioned that MP Motorsport really loves Drugovich, and Drugovich really loves them, and they have a great chemistry together. And that's evident, and I think this will only bolster their chances. The thing I'm curious about is, can they replicate this with anybody else? Several names have come up with potential moves to MP. Obviously, Drugovich won't be returning. So to fill that seat, will they be looking for somebody that's got the experience level that Drugovich has had? Are they going to take a punt on an F3 driver from this year? Many drivers are capable of that step up. And I think that's going to really define the trajectory that MP Motorsport takes in the coming years is not necessarily Drugovich, who I think has helped build this foundation, but the drivers who come after him and who can potentially follow in his footsteps.
Absolutely, and LA, that is going to be a really attractive seat for next season, isn't it? There's going to be a lot of drivers looking at that seat thinking, I fancy that, I fancy a bit of that, aren't they?
Yeah, obviously, but I kind of feel like they may be trying to structure their team a little bit like, High Tech and some of the others have over the years, of bringing drivers through from, F4 or certainly F3 if they have an F3 team. And Kyle, is absolutely worthy of that seat, in my opinion. He's done incredibly well this season. And I'm definitely not sort of being a rumour monger, because you do see the F3 drivers going in and out of the F2, they're right next to each other. There's sort of no separate paddock as such, even though they have separate garages. But Kai, spent a lot of time, I kept seeing him up the F2 end at Zandvoort, but then Kush as well, So, I mean, I kind of feel like it could be one of those guys that come up. But it is quite funny you mention sort of 2021, because talking about Felipe, who wasn't with MP last season, and he didn't get a race win at all last season, which I kind of feel like he's come under the radar a little bit. It was quite unexpected from my point of view that Felipe's won the championship this year because of his previous results. And he came ninth in 2020 when he was with MP, I think with only maybe three wins, or quite a few amount of wins. So I'm not sure a lot of people would have thrown his name into the hat this year. But Michael's exactly right. It's not just Felipe by himself. If you look at MP's performance overall at the beginning of the season, maybe the first third of the season, that MP car was in a league of its own. there was a real massive difference to how it was performing compared to the other cars on that racetrack. And, Felipe made the most of it at the times. He got the points when it mattered, from my point of view, and that's pretty much what secured him that championship. As we've said, there's been no outright domination this season. The top 7 have been they've been very consistent, to be perfectly honest with you. They've all scored points consistently, all the way down to Liam Lawson in 7th. But Felipe has just done the best job out of everybody, and MP absolutely deserve it. They're a fantastic team. They've got wonderful staff who are always very generous, with their time for the media and for us as well here at Inside F2. So I congratulate them all.
Absolutely. Congratulations to MP Motorsport. Congratulations to Felipe Drugovich, champions of 2022. Okay, competition time now. MP Motorsport have very kindly given us a few driver cards signed by the 2022 champion, Felipe Drugovich. So to be in with a chance of winning a signed card, all you have to do is answer the following question. Felipe Drugovich did the double earlier on this season, where he won the sprint race and the feature race on the same weekend. But at what circuit was it at? To be in with a chance of winning the prize, head over to our post on either our Twitter or our Instagram and correctly answer the question in the comments. To win, you'll need to be following us on the social media channel that you're commenting on, have liked the post and have tagged a friend along with your answer. A really cool prize, especially if you're a Felipe Drugovich fan, so wishing you all the very best of luck. Okay, championship aside, it was a great weekend of action, wasn't it? There was drama everywhere you looked. A few post-race notes from the FIA. So I think it's worth recapping on the result from the feature race. It was Jehan Daruvla who was our feature race winner in a chaotic race ahead of ART's Frederick Vesti. Ayumu Iwasa was disqualified from the race about 4 hours after the checkered flag. Basically, the plank underneath his car was thinner than it should have been. That's the basic way of explaining it. So he was disqualified. That means Enzo Fittipaldi is promoted to P3 for his 6th podium of the season. Dennis Hauger finished P4, David Beckman P5, Drugovich P6, Cordial 7th, Novalak 8th. Long-time race leader Richard Verschoor finished 9th, and Yuri Vips, after a very up-and-down weekend, was the last of the point scorers. And there were only 13 runners who were classified in the end in the feature race. And the FIA stewards also released a statement after the race apologising to Yuri Vips for mistakenly giving him a 10-second stop-go penalty, blaming an administrative error. We're going to come on to that very shortly. But yeah, LA, as we said, Jehan Daruvla was the feature race winner, and he kept his head, came from 6th on the grid and became our 12th winner of the year.
He did, yeah. I mean, how many winners have we had? Hasn't it been a fantastic year for that? He absolutely did keep his head. It's his first win since Abu Dhabi last season, which is sort of crazy to think about. And yet he's been on the podium 7 times. I think this weekend was his 7th time. There has been a lot going wrong for him. I think it's been a bit of a mixture of between the car, the balance with the tyres, and then his personal tyre management. There's been a couple of mistakes there, and quite a few pigeons as well in Zandvoort that maybe have distracted him a little bit. Who knows? He's had quite a few races where he's done really well, but then he's sort of dropped off a little bit, been overtaken, lost some points, lost some places. But today in the feature race, 2 safety cars, red flag. By lap 16, he's up to P2. He's on the team radio asking about other drivers and their tyre strategies and where everybody's at. So it's good to see that he's thinking about where the others are, where he is, what he can do. And at that point, it pretty much looked like it was his race to win. And he did, he did keep his head. He had Verschoor in front of him, as you've said, until about lap 23-ish when he pitted. And he appeared to have no team radio at the end. He came over team radio and sort of said, I can't hear you, and can you put the gap on the pit board so I can see it? So he was taking a punt on, they could still hear him. And he went, I'm really pleased for him. I'm really, really happy for him. He's worked very hard this season and gone to Prema, obviously with them hopes of winning race after race, like the last, couple of seasons have for Piastris and Schwartzmans and Schumachers, and he was very much hoping for that this year, and that hasn't come to him. So, I hope we're not finished. We've still got Abu Dhabi to get to. It kind of feels like it's finished, doesn't it, in a little bit of a way? But hopefully that will give him a boost of confidence. And I don't think it's anything confirmed for him for next season yet. I don't think we know where he's going, even though we can suspect and talk amongst ourselves. But I hope it's put a smile on his face anyway.
Imi, an overdue win, would you say?
Considering it's taken sort of nearly a whole season for him to get another win, it probably is. However, obviously because F2 this year, there's been a lot of people consistently running quite high up the field. It's been proven like a difficult season to put yourself in that spot where you will be getting on the podium or even like getting those wins. So for him, considering obviously been in F2 last year as well, and that hopeful move to Prema, it probably was overdue for him. Been waiting a long time to get that podium. You could see as well sort of his reactions to it and everything. It meant a lot to him to get that podium again. So yeah, probably overdue for him.
Yeah, really, really happy for Jehan. This first feature race win in Formula 2, and he becomes the first Indian driver to win a feature race in the modern era of Formula 2 as well. I do have to ask though, Michael, he was caught up in an incident with Jack Doohan, Logan Sargent, who ended up out of the race. Did he move in the braking zone in the lead up to that incident? And should the stewards have maybe had a look at that? As I said, really happy for Jehan, but yeah, was that something that he could have been penalised for?
Well, the stewards, when they looked at it, they basically said that there were mitigating circumstances, and by that they meant that Daruvala was obviously in the middle of the circuit, well towards the left, and then Doohan was kind of one car length behind him, and Sargent was again sort of alongside Doohan further to the right. And so Jehan kind of braked earlier because the document said he was on the dirtier side of the track. Obviously, when you are there towards the apex of turn 4, there's less grip. And so he obviously had to brake earlier not to go speeding off into the runoff. The other two cars had a better line. They braked. The logical thing is, Jehan doesn't move over in that case, but because there were two cars and not one, the stewards treated it differently. I think it's fair reasoning. I think it is also fair to say, you shouldn't have made an exception. The initial contact with Doohan was potentially something that would have been worth maybe a 5-second penalty. I don't know really where I come down on this one. I think I trust the steward's judgment personally on this one. It reminds me a little bit of the incident we had last year at Baku. It was another 3-1 don't go situation involving, it was Dan Ticktum, Mark Armstrong, and Theo Pourchaire. Obviously, Pourchaire had the broken arm in that situation, which was pretty severe. But that then again, you can argue all day kind of about whose fault it was, what the issue was. In this case, it's pretty clearly you've exonerated the two that are further back. Maybe it was a touch ambitious from Logan, but you can't penalize that really. And obviously Jack was just kind of running his own race. So I think if you penalize anybody, it's Jehan, but it's one of these things that lap 1 is chaotic. Lap 1 at Monza into the chicanes is notoriously chaotic, and trying to find any sort of incident or putting blame on someone, it's got to be a really egregious mistake. And I think we can agree this was not really a mistake necessarily. It was just kind of two different approaches into that corner that kind of coalesced and had a pretty unfortunate result. And a real shame for those two drivers who'd had solid weekends. And obviously Jack had the poor start, but had a really great pole position. So too bad that they weren't able to capitalize on that and show their potential.
Yeah, as you say, a shame for Jack Doohan, who was obviously down there in the first place because he had a clutch issue, which is very unfortunate. And Logan Sargent, had a bit of misfortune this weekend as well, didn't he? Plenty of other incidents in that race as well. We had an accident at the start of the feature race involving Theo Pourchaire, Ralph Boschung, Ollie Caldwell, and the returning Luca Giotto, who would have been hoping for a better weekend. I think that's fair to say. First of all, we're glad that everyone's okay because it was a pretty nasty incident. But yeah, Imi, would you say that was a racing incident?
I'd say it was probably a racing incident, the amount of people that it did involve. But I watched the replay quite a few times through on that one, like trying to slow it down frame by frame to see exactly sort of what went on. And you can see, like with Boschung, like where he re-entered, he came a bit too far over, a bit overconfident with his re-entering onto the track. At which point, there was also Marina Sato on the outside, which I didn't really realise to start with, and there was sort of just this whole thing of just trying to avoid Boschung at the same time, but Boschung was probably a bit too far in, a bit too far over, and they just all clipped together, and it got caught up in the end. So again, if there was anyone to penalise, it probably would be Boschung for just like slightly unsafe re-entering of the track. But again, I think the sort of multitude that it was and the size of it was definitely probably a racing incident on that one.
Yeah, absolutely agreed, and a shame for all of those drivers. Obviously, Teo Pourchaire in the title battle. Ollie Caldwell, I mean, second race in a row that he was caught up in an incident. He was caught up in an incident with Tatiana Calderon on the Saturday, Michael. And I think you got a bit of an update for us in terms of Tatiana Calderon, haven't you?
I do. So this kind of inadvertently turned into a little Inside F2 exclusive straight from the paddock. So Saturday night, Tatiana was wandering around with a kind of like a gauze cast or whatever you call it, just sort of like a small thing on her wrist. And I was like, is everything all right? Obviously, I wanted to check in with her, first and foremost. Is she feeling okay? And she said, yeah, just, from the incident, she'd hit her hand. And it was a little bit painful, but she was like, yeah, I'm going to race tomorrow. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'll check in with you then. And then I get to the circuit and I find out that Tatiana's not starting the race. And so anyways, I go over, I ask around, and then I'm told by a couple of different people that she's broken her hand. And obviously that wasn't stated in the initial release. But I mean, it's a pretty severe injury for something that's so minor, such a really a small contact between her and Ollie Caldwell. I think they just kind of locked wheels in turn one and got stuck. But there's always the classic advice about take your hands off the steering wheel when you lose control. And it's so difficult in a slower corner like that when you think you can maybe save it, and then you just hit it at the wrong angle and it snaps. The incident I mentioned earlier with in Baku last year was pretty much the same thing for Pourchaire. It wasn't that he kept his hands on the wheel too long. It was just a really unfortunate angle of impact. And I'm fairly sure that's what happened to Tatiana this time around. Very lucky for her that she's got 2.5 months off before Abu Dhabi. She does expect to be back there and should be fully recovered, but it's never fun to go through that, to break any part of your body, let alone one that is so crucial for racing. So best wishes to her for a speedy recovery.
Yeah, echo that. Inside F2 wishing Tatiana Calderon a very speedy recovery, really. Second weekend in a row, as we've mentioned, Teo Pourchaire. Heartbreaking to see him sat on the floor, wasn't he, after that incident? Alex Jake saying in commentary that Pourchaire, he started the triple header thinking that he could win the title, and he ends it 75 points behind Felipe Drugovich and probably looking over his shoulder at Logan Sargent, Jack Doohan and co behind him. It's just not been his season, LA, has it? It's just not come together, particularly in the second half of the season, has it?
I think it's been very mixed, because some races is absolutely his, and he's shining, and it's like, oh, this is Teo Pourchaire that we know and love. And then the next minute, even when the season started in Bahrain, look how mixed that was, first race out, next race, look what happened. So not his season to win the championship, obviously. And I think, again, it's been a mix of him not quite getting things right, and then issues with the car as well. It's been a mixed bag. And he won that race before the break in Hungary, so it did look like he'd come back and make a last minute sort of push for that championship, but even in Zandvoort last week, he was very, very positive, even after that weekend, and he made it very clear, but in a very the lovely way that he speaks to everybody, is that he thought that he could still do it. Mathematically, I can still win this, and that was such sort of a very nice surprise to have seen that attitude. Because there have been drivers in the past that have absolutely been, down in the dumps, given up, negative, end of my season, forget it, and absolutely not. Still believed up until that final moment. He made some wonderful moves in that sprint race yesterday. Working his way up, late braking, head of Lawson, turn one, no room, bumped wheels. in the gravel race over, which we saw, championship over. And it kind of felt like, you know, with Felipe going out on lap 1, that this was his chance. This was the moment. And the way he was driving was magnificent. But, you know, he was my winner this year. I had pegged him for the win. He's a wonderful presence in the paddock, and we kind of feel, we are hoping that he may very well be in F1 next season. There's been no confirmations, but we know that a few of the F2 drivers now are kind of finding that seat in the garage where they're gaining a wealth of experience and information, even though they might not be in a car, they might not be racing. So let's hope that he progresses up into F1 anyway. We all know he's an F1 driver, don't we? We all know he's that good, regardless of issues and not winning the championship this season. I just, you know, you're right about people coming very, very close behind him. It's getting very, very tight at the top. Logan can quite easily finish in P2. You know, any of the others, there's 4 drivers that are joint fourth, is it? 4 drivers are joint fourth, 120.
Three that are joint fourth. Three that are joint fourth, and Logan Sargent, who is only 9 points up the road. So it's very close going into the final round.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be incredibly close. It's just crazy how many drivers are on the same points, and it goes to show that that's what the kind of season it's been. You know, is what I pretty much said at the beginning. You know, it's been a season where they've just been spreading the points across the board. But also remember that the teams have done fantastic this season. You know, you've had other seasons where last year HWA finished with 9 points. The year before Trident finished with 6 points. And yet VAR, Van Amersfoort, who are at the bottom of the standings, are on 61. That's a huge, huge gap from the previous 2 seasons of the team that finished at the bottom. And even though I'm sure that they wouldn't necessarily want to finish at the bottom of the standings, I still feel that 61 points for them in their very first Formula 2 season is a massive achievement, you know, and it's really, really good to see all of the teams doing reasonably well this season.
Yeah, it shows how competitive Formula 2 is, and really there's not a bad seat on the grid really when you look at it, is there? And we won't talk about our predictions at the beginning of the season, because I also predicted Teo Pourchaire and he hasn't won, so we're gonna forget that happened at the beginning of the season. So okay, Imi, Teo Pourchaire, will he be looking over his shoulders going into the final round of the season? Obviously, Jack Doohan, Logan Sargent, Liam Lawson, Fittipaldi, Daruva, like that. They're not far behind, are they? Is he going to be looking behind, or is he going to be looking up the road and trying to finish the season strongly?
I think the way that Pourchaire is, you've seen it last year, you've seen it this year, he's very, very driven to be getting those wins, be sort of at the front of the road. He is a really good driver at the end of the day, and obviously there's a lot of hope for him to get into F1 in the end of the day. Obviously, Sauber driver as well. But considering how close the field is and how sort of consistent some of the drivers have been, even though they're a bit further down, it's probably going to be a bit sort of looking behind him, because he's going to know that he's had a bit of bad luck this year, especially this weekend as well, where he could have taken the championship. He's had some unfortunate incidents, and those have usually sometimes been involving people that are very close to behind him now as well. So you've got people like Liam Lawson, who has had some really, really great rounds this year, but has also had some incredibly bad luck. And obviously, earlier today in the race, he was looking on for potentially the win until the unfortunate timing of the safety car coming out ahead of him, and the field, including Marcus Armstrong behind him, like completely diving in the pits and managing to get pit stops in, and then obviously being taken out by Vips as well in that incident. So people like Lawson and those just behind, Logan Sargent, another one, both Carlin drivers had some really bad luck whilst being really consistent drivers this year. So I think Pourchaire does need to watch his back going into the final round.
Yeah, really looking forward to Abu Dhabi and see, the battle for second, third, fourth is going to be mega, isn't it? Okay, the stewards were absolutely on one today, weren't they? Dishing out penalties, particularly to the high-tech drivers. Marcus Armstrong penalised twice for crossing the line, heading into the pit lane, and then for speeding in the pit lane. Yuri Vips given a 10-second stop-go penalty for a tangle with Liam Lawson, which at the time seemed incredibly harsh. The stewards then releasing a statement after the race to apologise to Yuri Vips, as we've already mentioned. It's all well and good, the apology, Michael, but it's a little bit too late, isn't it? He's already had his race ruined.
The very sad thing about this is these are drivers who, when they get penalized, it didn't really affect Vips's case that much today. He's not in the title fight, but if this had been in a very close championship fight, think, let's say 2020, when you've got Schumacher, Eilert, and then, of course, Tsunoda at the very end all battling up there, and you get this kind of penalty, if it's a driver who's really running up there, that could kill their chances of the title, or at least put a severe dent in it. And so I think the stewards potentially dodged a bullet today with the circumstances of where Vips is in the title fight, but it's human error. I get it. These things happen, and the online reaction to this has been pretty vitriolic, which I understand people are angry, but I also know that, things do happen. At the same time, you have to wonder if, broadly thinking about the penalties, whether they're done correctly. One question I've always had about this is when a driver cannot serve their drive-through or stop-go penalty in race for whatever reason it comes, the penalty is applied after the fact, or its penalty is given out on the very last lap and they obviously can't come in. Those two penalties are converted automatically to a 20-second and a 30-second addition, respectively. And the issue with that is that that's consistent across any circuit, any set of circumstances. But actually going into the pit lane and serving a drive-through, serving a stop-go penalty is not consistent at all circuits. The time loss that you get from going into the pit lane at some circuits is huge compared to others. Zandvoort is pretty short, for example. Silverstone is notoriously a very long. When you go into the pit lane, you're losing a lot of time. That's one thing I believe that circuit's quite famous for. And so that alone necessarily, it could be a big issue when you're looking at different, like when you apply the penalty after the fact. Is it going to be more severe than it should be at some circuits and less severe at others? You can't really grade it because obviously you don't want to manipulate the race. We all know the consequences of this very, very well from last year's Formula One, but not that was manipulated necessarily, but it was obviously very controversial what happened. And I think in this case, they did the best they could to sort of redress the incident, but it really was too late. And you can't really make it up to the driver either. You can't give them time back. So I think what this warrants is another look at it. And potentially, from a very simple administrative point of view, don't call it a 10-second stop and go penalty. Just label it as stop go. And then it doesn't get confused with the standard 10-second. Because when they are labeled so similarly, confusion's bound to happen. It's not the first time I've seen this, that they've displayed it and then had to correct it a few seconds later. It's just this one didn't get corrected for whatever reason. So given that that's happened now time and time again, and we've obviously seen the pretty ugly consequences of it today, I think it is time for a look at, very simple, how do we label things? Can it be generally understood that a stop-go penalty equals 10 seconds? And if it does, then why bother mentioning it every time and only adding to the confusion? So I think it's time for, we've talked about penalty points in the wake of these race bans. Did another one. Obviously this weekend, Roy Nissany couldn't partake. Third driver now this year to be banned. And that's another thing that's come up repeatedly is are we treating that properly? Are we giving those drivers the penalties that are really driving dangerously, or are they being dished out for things that aren't really necessarily egregious? And the whole system, I think after this year, we've had quite a few too many incidents like this, and it does need a re-envisioning, lest somebody's career gets severely jeopardized because of it.
Can I just ask though, did the stewards go back on the decision of it wasn't Vip's fault with Lawson, or are they still saying it was Vip's caused the sort of collision, didn't give the room? Have they gone back on that decision, or are they still saying this penalty was just too severe? Is that what's been said?
Yeah, the latter, LA. They're saying that it was still Yuri Vips's fault, but the penalty was too harsh. Which
okay,
I think makes sense.
I have to disagree. He still finished ahead of Liam Lawson, who had no choice but to have to go in black and orange flag, change his front wing because of Yuri's actions. So I actually feel like if somebody does that kind of maneuver, that you completely ruin somebody else's race, and whether that's in F1, F2, F3, then absolutely the penalty should be that severe that you affect the culprits race significantly enough, so then they will consider their actions next time they're in that situation. If they're let off with 5-second penalties here and there, and they could still potentially win a race or finish on a podium, how is that fair to the person that's been knocked off the track? It isn't. So I actually was quite satisfied with that today. If it was Vips's fault, he still finished ahead of Lawson, and to me that is absolutely not fair. So sorry, very strong, but that's my opinion.
I know what you're saying. I suppose the thing there is the consistency, isn't it? Making sure that that's the same for every single incident, every time another driver's race is affected, that they give the consistent penalty, which they haven't done so far this season. It's been a 5-second penalty or a 10-second penalty for causing a collision. So maybe that's one for over the winter to have a little look at the rules and to maybe reassess that one. So not a great Sunday for Yuri Vips, but a great Saturday. He won the sprint race, didn't he, from Frederick Vesti? It was a great drive from him, wasn't it, Ellie?
Yeah, I muted myself again then, sorry. It was, yeah. I mean, he redeemed himself after Baku, didn't he? And I'm really glad to see that he won that. He put his head down. He's had a difficult season, we know, for other reasons as well. He's put his head down. He's worked very, very hard. And he admits that he's no harder on himself than himself is. He doesn't need anyone else telling him what he does wrong. He is a lovely guy. He's a very nice man. And I just think it was great. It was great for him to win yesterday, definitely. And let's hope. We're not sure what's going to be happening with him next season. Maybe he'll be back. Hopefully he'll be back. And if he is, the lessons he's learnt this year may very well make him champion next year. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe. Let's wait and see what Yuri Vips's plans are. I couldn't believe it. Their first win since Baku last year, which obviously won 2 races that weekend, which is an incredible stat, bearing in mind the positions he's been in at certain points this season, leading races. Okay, Imi, I wanted to get your thoughts. Obviously, a crazy final round of Formula 3 action. Victor Martin's crowned champion. How many of those Formula 3 drivers do you think could be in Formula 2 next season? Because there is a real great young crop of drivers there in Formula 3, and there could be a few in Formula 2 next season, right?
Definitely could. It's the amount of people as well going into today that were still in contention for that championship as well. It's insane. It proves actually that though there may be definitely some questionable driving standards in F3 a lot of the time, how consistent some of the drivers really can be and how close it is between all of them. Obviously, we had as well after the race all the post-race penalties that we were still waiting to find out whether Martin was actually the champion about 30 minutes after they'd red flagged the race in a way. But yeah, my sort of thinking was Bierman and Maloney, they're both in their rookie season and they were fighting for the championship sort of still this weekend, and they were both very, very close on points. And that's sort of compared to these other sort of drivers that we've seen come up through the feeder series that have been winning championships in their rookie seasons. So I'd like to be able to say that they'll both be in F2 maybe next year as well, but also had the idea maybe they'll stay in F3 for another year and fight for the championship. And then also Isaac Hadjar is one that I believe is confirmed for F2 next year, and that I think I've heard that somewhere. So obviously that's at least one that again been a really consistent drive this year that's going to hopefully be there. And then obviously Victor Martin, incredible championship, definitely well deserved for him. So I'm just hoping he'll definitely have that move up to F2 and maybe even be fighting for a championship straight away in that as well.
It's going to be really interesting to see, isn't it? There's so much talent in this year's Formula 3 field. And I do wonder how many of those will be given an opportunity in a Formula 2 car for the first time at Abu Dhabi later on this year. We saw it last year with Logan Sargent and Jack Doohan jumping in a Formula 2 car after the Formula 3 season finished. We'll wait and see on that one. Okay, let's take a look at the championship standings before we go then. Felipe Drugovich cannot be caught at the top of the standings. He extended his lead to 75 points over Teo Pourchaire heading into the last round of the season. As we've already alluded to, Logan Sargent sits P3 at the moment, but it's game on for the top three until the end of the season. Jack Doohan, Jehan Daruvala and Enzo Fittipaldi all tied on 126 points going into the last round. 9 drivers in with a mathematical chance of finishing P3 in the standings with 1 round to go, all the way down to Dennis Hauger in P11. It is seriously competitive. And the team standings, it's all square at the top of the team standings. ART and MP both tied on 281 points going into the final round of the season. Carlin have an outside chance of winning the team standings. They sit 24 points back. Prema, High Tech and Dams round out the top 6. And as always, the full standings are available on our website, www.insidef2.com. Okay, that's all we got time for today. My thanks to LA, to Michael and to Imi for joining me on today's show. A bit of a break before Abu Dhabi now, but do not worry. Inside F2 will be providing you with lots of content over the break, some really cool stuff coming your way. Subscribe to make sure that you don't miss any of that coming your way over the next few weeks. If you've enjoyed the show, make sure you give it a like and let us know what your thoughts are in the comments. Your likes and opinions really do mean a lot to us. Hashtag the F2 show to get involved in the conversation on our social media channels. And don't forget as well to enter that competition to win a signed Felipe Drugovich card. That is a really cool prize and I'm gutted that I can't enter. But from me, Fraser Ford, and all of us here at Inside F2, we'll see you next time.